Hey there, welcome back to Pepper Geek. In today's video, I'll be showing you how to craft your own hot sauce from scratch. So the purpose of this video is not to show you a specific recipe, but rather give you our formula, our structured technique that we have used time and time again to create our own unique hot sauce recipes. That way, hopefully you can get creative in your own kitchen with your fresh ingredients and your herbs and spices and come up with something that's truly your own. So I'm gonna share our entire technique and thought process as we go into creating new hot sauces, and I'll also be crafting an all new hot sauce in this video. If you're interested in some of our hot sauce recipes and other pepper-based recipes, check out our cookbook down in the description below. It has tons of recipes, several different hot sauce recipes that are delicious, but also many other spicy and flavorful recipes from dips to main courses and everything in between. Check it out in the first link in the description. Now, before I get into the technique, I want to share some basic tips when you're making your own hot sauce. The first of which is to think about ventilation. You're going to be working with spicy ingredients, hot peppers, and when you cook those ingredients, you can end up with sort of spicy air, and that's really not fun for any of us. So open up a window, get some airflow, turn on a fan, and also be sure to wear some nitrile gloves if you're going to be handling any hot peppers. Another tip is to work in small batches. So instead of making a gallon of a brand new hot sauce recipe without knowing if it's going to be any good, I prefer to work in smaller batches, maybe around 1 to 2 hot sauce bottles at a time, and then from there you can scale your recipe in the future if it comes out really good. Another tip is to write things down. Get a pen and paper, and whenever you're adding a new ingredient to your hot sauce recipe, write down the amount that you added so that you don't forget. And my last tip is the most important, which is go into your hot sauce recipe with some sort of plan. Maybe you want to go with a certain type of cuisine, or maybe you want it to have a specific use case like on grilled fish, or maybe you just want to make the perfect pizza hot sauce. Coming up with some sort of general guideline to your hot sauce beforehand can be really helpful when you're selecting your ingredients. Okay, with that, let's talk about the 3 main components that go into our hot sauce technique. Number 1 are fresh ingredients. So these are the things that you're gonna be pulling straight out of your garden or the refrigerator, and they'll make up a decent portion of the volume of your hot sauce, as well as the color, if that matters to you. So we're talking about hot sauce, and in most cases, we'll be using some hot peppers to spice up our sauces here. And you can go from sweet peppers all the way to super hot peppers. It depends on your spice tolerance and the use case of your hot sauce. But almost no hot sauce is made up entirely of peppers. You can use other fresh ingredients from the garden like carrots, onions, tomatoes, garlic. But we're not just talking about vegetables. You can also use fruits. You can use things like berries. Think strawberries and blueberries, blackberries, maybe even banana or papaya. If there's a fruit that you really like the flavor of, it can definitely be worked into a hot sauce and made delicious. Once you have your fresh ingredients selected, it's important to cook them in some way. In most cases, it's not completely necessary, but it does add a lot of flavor in some cases and can also soften up the ingredients to make them more blendable to end up with a smoother consistency in your sauce. So some of my favorite methods of cooking are grilling your ingredients, so grilled peppers, getting that nice blackened char on the outside of the skin. Roasting in the oven over really high heat, again, achieves a very similar outcome. Pan searing in a cast iron skillet over really high heat, again, gets that caramelization going on your fresh ingredients. And if you happen to have a smoker, smoking your fresh ingredients can add a ton of flavor if you're going for a smokier sauce. And one last option you can use with your fresh ingredients that's kind of like cooking is fermentation. This is one of our fermented mashes this year. I won't go into the process of fermentation in this video because it takes a long time, but I will leave a link down below to our video on fermenting peppers if you're interested. Okay, on to component number 2 of hot sauce making, and those are our liquid ingredients. These usually include some form of vinegar or acidic liquid, like white vinegar, apple cider vinegar. Also, lemon and lime juice can add a lot of acidity and bite. Also included in this group are sweeteners, so we have maple syrup, honey, molasses, agave nectar. You could even use jams or jellies. The most important goal here is to thin out the sauce so that it is pourable, but also in the case of vinegars and acidic liquids, to preserve our fresh ingredients. And finally, our herbs and spices make up the last component of hot sauce making. This is where things can get incredibly diverse and interesting. And there are also so many different techniques you can use to add even more flavor to your herbs and spices, like toasting or smoking them beforehand. We'll get into that a little bit later. Again, it can be a really good idea to focus on a culinary region that has some things figured out. Maybe you like Mexican flavors for your tacos, or maybe you really like that Jamaican jerk seasoning. That can really help you hone in on which ingredients are gonna work well together. Or of course, you can throw caution to the wind and just put together some of your favorite herbs and spices and hope that it works out. After all, somebody put peanut butter inside a chocolate and discovered that that was delicious, so feel free to go wild. But just to go through a few examples that I really like using in hot sauces: onion powder, garlic powder, cumin, celery seed, ground ginger and turmeric, coriander, fennel seed, Szechuan peppercorns, cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, allspice, cardamom. And then when it comes to dried herbs like thyme and oregano, it can be a good idea to grind them even further into almost a powder to get more of their flavor evenly distributed throughout your sauce. So I really recommend using a spice grinder and to grind down some of your seeds or spices into a powder form. And of course, peppers themselves can be turned into a spice. So this is actually our homemade chipotle powder. These are smoked red jalapeños, dehydrated and ground into a powder. Also dehydrated peppers like this pasilla chili. These are great to add. You can rehydrate them and blend them into the sauce, or you can grind them into a powder before adding to the sauce. It's really up to you. And we always get this question, can you use frozen peppers to make hot sauce? Absolutely. Just pull them out of the freezer, let them thaw, and you can either cook them with your fresh ingredients or blend them straight into the sauce. And we can't finish talking about herbs and spices without talking about salt and pepper. These are pretty essential ingredients, especially salt. Salt just makes all of the flavors combine and pop. Without it, your sauce will definitely be lacking. Okay, so I'm gonna go through and select some of the ingredients here and clean up a little bit, and we can make a brand new hot sauce. Okay, so I've chosen my ingredients, and yes, I've gone a little bit overboard here, but I wanted to showcase the different techniques you can use as you go about making your sauce. So this sauce is definitely gonna be kind of robust and crazy. It might not even come out very good, but it should be interesting nevertheless. So I did say that you should come up with a plan of some sort, and my plan with this hot sauce is to make a smoky, barbecue-inspired hot sauce. So not exactly barbecue sauce, but sort of a hybrid hot sauce barbecue flavor profile, and hopefully we'll achieve that. So let me go through all the ingredients that I've chosen. I'll be using an onion, 2 sweet peppers, 3 jalapeños, and a hot pepper. This is sort of like a Scotch bonnet level heat, habanero, and a big clove of garlic. For the liquid ingredients, I'll be using apple cider vinegar, some molasses, some Worcestershire sauce, some tomato paste, and a little bit of fresh squeezed lemon juice. And I'll be using a little bit of extra virgin olive oil to roast up the fresh ingredients and get them nice and charred. And lastly, onto the dry ingredients. I couldn't help but get a little bit carried away over here, but we'll be using some mustard seed, which we'll toast up beforehand, onion and garlic powder, our homemade smoked chipotle powder. We do have a recipe if you want to try making this at home, or a more popular smoky spice that you can find at the grocery store is smoked paprika. This is another homemade pepper powder. It's a pretty spicy one as well, so this is going to add a lot of heat and a very unique flavor. 1 dried pasilla pepper. For more added sweetness, I'll be using some light brown sugar. And probably the most obscure ingredient I'll be using is allspice. It's definitely not something you typically see in barbecue sauce, but as I was going around smelling the different aromas that are going to be involved in the sauce, this seemed to complement them. And lastly, of course, salt and black pepper. So that comes to a grand total of 21 ingredients. You definitely don't have to get this crazy. And again, I will be honest with you at the end of this. If this sauce comes out tasting horrible, you'll know about it. But that's definitely part of the process. We've made plenty of bad batches of hot sauce, and maybe this will be one of them, maybe not. So to cook our fresh ingredients and add some flavor at the same time, I'm gonna use probably the easiest and one of my favorite methods of doing this, and that is to roast them. So I'm just gonna slice the onions into a similar thickness as my pepper walls. Make sure everything cooks pretty evenly. Now for anything hotter than a jalapeno, I recommend just roasting it whole so that you don't get that influx of capsaicin throughout your kitchen. And for roasting, I like to get a very nice thin layer of oil just to make sure that everything cooks evenly and gets a nice blistering effect throughout. Okay, so I'm gonna pop this in a preheated 425-degree oven for maybe 15 to 20 minutes. And you definitely want to flip everything about halfway through cooking to make sure that it cooks evenly. I am going to leave out the garlic clove. I might throw it in for the last minute or two of cooking, but I don't want this to burn. So while everything is roasting, I'm going to toast up a couple of our dry ingredients. I have mustard seeds, but if you're using anything whole like cumin seeds or celery seed, maybe even black peppercorns that you'll grind, you can toast them up in a hot pan just for a minute or two until it becomes fragrant, and then take them off the heat. By doing this, you're drawing more of the flavor out, releasing the natural oils of your spices. Okay, so the mustard seeds are nice and toasted up. All that's left to do is grind them up in a spice grinder, along with our toasted pasilla chili and about a teaspoon of our chipotle powder. Smells good, nice and smoky, and now I want to add the rest of our dry ingredients. I'm going to do half a teaspoon of garlic powder, do half a teaspoon of onion powder as well. We'll start with a half a teaspoon of sea salt, but you can always add more salt later. You can't take it back out. Half a teaspoon of black pepper. And now on to the finer ingredients. I'll add a quarter teaspoon of our hot pepper powder. This is pretty seriously spicy stuff, so I want to start on the conservative side. And now for the allspice, since this is definitely an experimental ingredient, I'm just going to start with 1/8 of a teaspoon there. I have to say that is a gorgeous mixture of spices. Hopefully it'll taste good too. I almost forgot one more important dry ingredient. That would be the light brown sugar. I'm going to start with a 1/4 cup of this. It's definitely going to be a sweeter hot sauce, so if that's not your thing, obviously you don't have to use sugar or even sweeteners at all in your own sauce. There's a couple minutes left on our roasted veggies, so I'm going to throw in the garlic. Now for the wet ingredients, the apple cider vinegar is going to make up the majority of the liquid component to the sauce. The others are more flavor enhancers, so there'll be much less of them when it comes to volume. So what you want to do is add your vinegar last, and we'll get to that. But basically we'll use the vinegar to get to the perfect consistency by adding small amounts at the very end. Woo! Okay, roasted veggies are perfectly done. And I want to allow that to cool. So while that finishes cooling off, we can finish preparing the wet ingredients. For the lemon, I'm just going to use half of a lemon squeezed. Worcestershire, I'm going to use maybe a teaspoon or two. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of tomato paste to add that nice, rich, deep, sweet tomatoey flavor. And I'll do 2 tablespoons of molasses. Yes, again, this is going to be a very sweet sauce. Now with vinegar, definitely start with less and add more later on because you can't get it back out of the sauce. And with this amount of ingredients, I know that maybe about a half a cup of vinegar is a good place to start. Smells very good. Honestly, I don't see how this could be bad, but stranger things have happened. Okay, the most exciting time has arrived. We have our fresh roasted ingredients, we have our liquid ingredients, and all of our dry ingredients. All that's left to do is combine them in a high-powered blender. There you go, the onions and peppers and garlic. All the liquid ingredients. Beautiful caramel color. The brown sugar. So satisfying. And all of our amazing spices. And let's start on low. I like to use low to get things incorporated and then boost it up to high for a little bit at the end to get it velvety smooth. Now that is a beautiful barbecue sauce color, and all that's left to do is taste it and season to taste. If it needs anything else, we can still add in a few more of our ingredients if necessary. Moment of truth, let's take a little taste. I'm not kidding, that is delicious. Of course, it's pretty obvious why. There's a whole heck of a lot of sugar in there, and it is pretty sweet, but I love me a sweet hot sauce. And that would be so good on grilled chicken, ribs, pulled pork. I don't think I really want to add anything. If anything, it might be able to use a little bit more salt, but the heat level is perfect, not overwhelming. But believe me, this is not how it's gonna work out every single time you make a new sauce. You can get yourself right up to the blending point and you're so excited, and it's a bit of a letdown. We've experienced that many times. If you wanted it a little bit spicier, you could blend in another fresh hot pepper, or you could add some more cayenne pepper or something else that has more heat. And you can even roast up more vegetables if you think it needs a little bit more body. Again, just write down everything that goes into the sauce and you can put together your recipe at the end. Now the thickness came out just right, in my opinion. It will thicken up over time, but if you did need to thin it out, you could just add a tablespoon at a time of vinegar, blend it thoroughly, and test it again until you're happy with the consistency. All that's left to do is bottle this up, and we don't have any traditional style hot sauce bottles right now, so I'm gonna use this small ball jar. And just to demonstrate what's possible, these are two of our other hot sauce recipes that we made using this exact technique, but they have completely different flavor profiles. This one is sort of lemony and fresh, great on pasta, lasagna, Italian food, pizza. And this is our simple habanero hot sauce. It only has 6 ingredients, but again, it's packed with flavor. And don't forget to check out our cookbook down in the description below. The first link will take you there. I really hope you found this video helpful and that it helps you make your own hot sauce at home. If you come up with something amazing and you feel inclined to share, leave a comment down below with some interesting flavor combinations. We're always curious to try new things. And thanks so much for watching Pepper Geek.